Welcome to See Beneath Your Beautiful, where guests share stories of adversity and perseverance, which inspire, encourage, and challenge us. We embrace these tough conversations, intimately exploring our loves, fears, and hopes with a delicious combination of depth and lightness.
Hi, Kara. My name is Ezzie Dominguez. Let's see, how can I introduce myself? Well, I'm a mom. I'm a sister. In my current role, I'm a community director with the Pilsner Center for International Development. I've been an activist for the past 25 years, working in different areas from immigrant rights, women's rights, elderly rights, children's rights, educational rights, sexual abuse, education. I'm a mom to two wonderful children. And then I'm also a mom to two angel babies and a wonderful husband who I love very much.
I met you at the Supriya retreat, which is a retreat for women who have suffered from sexual abuse as children. And the reason I thought to ask you about yourself was you mentioned that you had two angel babies in one of the meetings. Do you want to talk about that at all? About your history? And you have a very colorful and sad history, but where you are today is why I wanted to interview you, because you are so vibrant. Every time I see you, honestly, you really light up a room. Your energy is so beautiful.
Thank you. Well, you heard me say that in my introduction. I'm a mom to two earth babies, and then I'm also a mom to two angel babies. I don't think we would consider ourselves mothers or whole mothers if we don't include all of our children. And then for me, including both of my angel babies and my earth babies is something that I'm always going to do. I lost my first child when I was very young, and I was 5 months pregnant, and I used to get beat up by my boyfriend at that time. He wasn't my husband, but I was also a drug addict. I was in a lot of drugs. I was part of a gang. Being hooked on drugs and being in this abusive relationship did have its consequences. So I ended up losing my first baby, which was very hard. I didn't quite understand it at that time. It hurt me deeply, but I just kind of brushed off because, of course, drugs were more important and fast life was more important. It wasn't until later on when it kind of fully grasped on, what was that? What did I do? And I think it was until my second child came, I just decided I'm not going to make the same mistakes. This is a gift. This is another baby that it's coming. My husband, I told you we were involved in a lot of drugs and we were involved in gangs, but he was a drug lord. And so at that time, he was only my boyfriend. And then we decided to get married. But when we got married, the abuse just kept going and going and going and going to the point where it just became unstoppable. I was witness to so many abuse on other individuals, people that they were illegal aliens, undocumented individuals that they were bringing from across the border, women who were being raped, children who were being, kept in houses, and then they were being held hostage. Mm-hmm. I was being a witness to a lot of that, but while I was being pregnant, and I was like, this is not the life that I want for me. I think at that time I was like, okay, wake up, get out of here. You have, better things to offer to the world. But of course, he would always threaten to kill me and kill my son. And so you're scared. You're scared to walk away, and you're scared to leave this luxurious life where you have everything and you're nothing. I gave up my school. I gave up my friends. I gave up my family. I gave up my life for this person that had no regards and no remorse and no love for me. And I had all this love to offer for him, but it was wrong. And my second son taught me to be strong. And he also taught me I don't need a man to be dependent. I can be independent. I can leave everything behind and start all over. As soon as he was born, I decided to talk about what was going on, the domestic abuse, the sexual abuse, the physical abuse, and decided to break out the silence and decided to go against my husband, which was very hard. I had to go into hiding for a few years. I couldn't talk about it to any of my families. I couldn't tell them what was going on for shame. But also I was dealing with a lot of things and I didn't want to get them involved in any way. Also for protection of my little one. I think for me, that was where I learned to become a mama bear. Like you have to protect those little ones, right? Like once you see their faces, you're like, oh my God, completely changes your life.
Mm-hmm.
We did end up living on the street for a few months because I just did not have anywhere to go. Then we got taken into a shelter. We were put into a protective home, but I didn't really like it. And I didn't really want my child to be growing up in there. So we were kind of like bouncing around in different areas until I heard back from home that my dad was like really sick. He had been diagnosed with cancer, and I decided, perfect opportunity for me to mend things with him, come back home. And so I decided to go back to Texas, bringing my little one with me. And I was living with my parents at that time and just helping my mom take care of my dad, working, got myself back in school, decided to get myself cleaned up, get out of drugs, get out of everything. It was really hard, very, very hard, especially because I had to like navigate all that with having a little one, not having a job, not having an education. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to get back, get my degree, get back my life together. And I did that for a few years, became a single mom. That's when I met my second husband. I had a hell of a divorce. It went through like a very hard fight. I had to get a lawyer to like completely divorce from this person who he was just horrible. Luckily, the law caught up with him. So they were able to like catch him and put him in jail. And then him, with along with other people who were doing a lot of illegal stuff, got deported back to Mexico. So at least I felt a little more protected because there was no way that he could like reach me or my son or anyone else. And so there were a lot of like protective mechanisms that we had to go through with the state to be able to be free and to be able to be witnesses under protective orders. And when I met my second husband, he was here in Colorado. So I was like, why not? This is a perfect opportunity. I don't think I've ever felt love in a way where the way he was expressing it and the way he was saying it, it was all unknown to me. I didn't know how to respond to like, I really like you, or you're really pretty. I love you. I was like, what do you mean you love me? What do you want out of it? It was always like very intimidating, knowing that somebody could love you despite of who you are and despite like all the mistakes you've made and despite of like everything that you had been facing. I didn't know how to react to that. I didn't know how to react to somebody like caring for me and loving for me, because everything I received from when I was like really young has been abuse after abuse after abuse and like negative stuff that I kind of like got used to that. So that when this person.
Does that include your parents?
No. My dad was like the most loving dad that you can ever think of. I didn't really get to see my dad a lot because he was always traveling. So we lived in Mexico before. This is where I was born. I was born in Mexico, and we lived in Mexico until I was age 12. Did not receive any abuse from my dad. Dad was like the most loving person that you can ever think of. My mom was very strict, but she was also a very kind and loving mother. I just think she made a lot of mistakes because she put her family first instead of putting us first. When the abuse started happening for me at a very young age, and I brought it up from a cousin, she protected that cousin instead of protecting me because it was her sister's son. For me, it kind of like disconnected, but it also broke a relationship of like, you're a loving, kind mom. I'm your daughter. Like, you should have protected me instead of protecting someone else. And also like not believing it or like disregarding it and saying like it didn't happen. Like, to me, it just did something. And so I kind of like disassociated from my family from that point on. Like, they don't care. So I became kind of like a protective person, kind of like I became almost like a motherly figure to my little siblings because I wanted to protect them. I also didn't want the same thing to happen to them because most of them were girls. And so I became what I wanted my mom to become. I became that like protective person because I didn't get that. And I think I've been like that ever since, protective of other people, protective of immigrant rights, protective of women, protective of children, protective of elderly, protective of like issues because of that.
I was sexually abused by a family friend when I was 7. And I told my mom, and I've had time to think about that. I don't know what she did. I don't know if she did anything about it. I don't know if she talked to the boy. I don't know what happened. All I know is, like you're saying, I wasn't validated. Nothing from my point of view happened. Nothing changed. The boy was still allowed to come over. And it left me with a feeling my entire life of I don't matter. You know, I have had terrible sexual experiences my whole life because I felt like I didn't matter. There was another time when I was 5 where I was touched inappropriately, but the 7-year-old thing is like the one time really where I can say that happened. And yet it led to an entire lifetime of I don't matter. Is that what you're saying as well? Like when moms don't react or fight for you or something, or just even, I'm sorry this happened to you, like acknowledge that it actually happened.
It breaks a bond, but it also breaks that loving cycle of like mother to daughter relationship.
Yeah.
I love my mom. I respect her dearly. She's a good mom. But to me, that instance of like when I was a girl, and I think I do that now because I'm an adult and I understand. And also because she was dealing with so many things. And, we were in a different country, the rules are differently, having abused and kids. And I mean, sisters marry brothers, families have that, it's kind of like a normal practice. But I don't think for them, like when you talk about women, sexual assault on a child or somebody touching you in a way that you do not like, they don't really quite understand it. And I think now that I see it, or now that I kind of like think more about it, I can understand like why, she kind of made that choice. Because families are very strong, especially like Catholic families, right? There's a lot of bonding. They don't want to like talk about like if you have a gay son, they don't want to talk about it. They'll try to hide it as much as they can. If there's a daughter that ends up being pregnant before she gets married with a white gown, they will try to hide the pregnancy and even take the child as their own child so that they don't like dishonor the family. There's a lot of those like cultural shocks, but also like traditions that it's really hard to break through. And I think so that when abuse happens, there's one emotional disconnection, but there's also like the traditional and there's also like the social classes and, what are they going to say? The shaming, the family is going to like hurt and injure so many people. And so I don't know what in their mind or what in her mind she was thinking or who she thought she was protecting, but she obviously was not protecting me. And I think for me, even being that young and being that naive and being that ignorant, I felt unloved. I felt unacknowledged. That left a scar on me that it will never be healed. No matter how much love, she now gives me, or no matter how many sorries people say, you can only heal from it, learn from it, and grow from it. But you can never, ever leave that identity from you. You can never leave that part. That will be not validating yourself, like what happened to you. And so I was abused as a child. And even though she didn't acknowledge it, I did.
Right.
As hard as it was, like what she did, it also kind of like showed me what I did not want to do and what I did not want to be like.
My brother remembers the time when I was 5, but my sister doesn't, the sister that's closest to me. It's so great to have somebody say, yes, that happened to you. You start not believing yourself. Did that ever happen to you? I am almost like, am I crazy? Because nobody ever talked about it and it wasn't even a thing. You're like, was it even a thing?
I ask myself this question all the time. Like, did somebody know? Could they see it? Could have done something about it? I come across the same answer all the time. And it's yes. A lot of people knew about it, but a lot of people just decided it is not our family. It is not my child. It is not my duty to protect her. It is not my responsibility. And so society does that as well as families.
Yeah.
My older sisters, even if they kind of knew what was going on or if they could see clues because they were older, they still were like, I'm not getting involved in this. That's your issue. You figure it out. And my brothers, I don't think they would have had any idea, because had they had any clue or idea, I think all of my brothers would have probably murdered him and been in jail by now. And my dad would have done the same thing. And so I think my mom was smart in not saying anything to my dad. because she knew how my dad was going to react. And then also how it would impact their relationship, right? Because he placed us in her care. He trusted that she was going to care for us and take care of us while he was away in the United States working and sending money back home to take care of his family. So when that family that you're so protecting, it's not all about money. He wasn't present. He was kind of like absent because he was always working and working, and we will only see him occasionally when he would come and visit us and be with my mom. But with my mom, she was with us at all time. The little times that she worked and the times that she was at home, she still allowed, like you said, like she still allowed my cousin to come in. She still allowed his mother to come in. She would still like set up, parties and spaces to, even though like I would hide, she would be like, why are you hiding in there? Come and say hi to your auntie. Come and say hi to your cousins. And it's not like saying hi in like Mexican families. It's all like about like shaking and kissing. And I'm like, I do not want to kiss this person. And I'm like here, like trying to back off. But they're like literally force you to like, you have to kiss every single family members. Just ridiculous.
It just feels so like you don't matter. For me, it wasn't actually the abuse. Like it happened. I survived. It wasn't that. It was my mother's non-acknowledgement.
But also by not acknowledging, they also allowed it to keep happening, and they allowed the abuse to be perpetuated over and over and over again. It's like a constant reminder, like even if you talk about it, even if you say it, like who's gonna believe you? Like, look, you said it and they didn't do nothing. Here I am, I'm doing it again. When the second abuse happened, it happened when I got married with my first husband. It was really hard to know that you were almost like a sexual toy for him, but also like he didn't care in offering me to like his friends and offering anyone else, because you're like a tool, you're an object, you're the wife, but like they don't have like any remorse or respect. I carried a lot of that damage from when I was a child. When I came to the United States, I had to like learn to like be part of society and learn a new language. And then also like, even if I would have talked then, like, who do I go talk to? They're not going to believe me. And if they believe me, like, who are they going to go drag? Bring my cousin out of Mexico and bring him in here? Like, they're going to be like, you're crazy. There's nothing we can do. It's like in another country like that.
Right.
There's nothing we literally can do because that's what the law tells you. And so I became very promiscuous when I started like middle school. You don't understand like why you're acting like that, right? Because that's also like all the mental abuse and all the abuse that you're still carrying on, and you're not healing from it. Like, I didn't know that there were social services that could help you. I didn't know that there were like resources that, you could go and talk to, therapy that you could take. I didn't know that at 12 years old. Like, what did I know? And coming into a new country, I didn't know like what I could do or couldn't do. Who could I talk to? Also, like with my broken English, some people wouldn't even understand me, what I was saying. And so it was really hard transitioning from living from Mexico into the United States. I thought, man, I escaped, right? I'm done with all the abuse. I've escaped it. I'm in a new world. I'm in a new country. I'm going to learn new things. I'm going to like start over again. And that didn't happen for me. I think for me, it was the clash of like everything, trying to figure out like, where am I? What is this new space? And it was like a completely different level of abuse, right? Abuse in school, because I had a teacher who used to teach us like music, and he used to like rub the violin and try to like grab her like shoulder and try to like massage her breast. And I panicked, like I would like freeze. I didn't know how to react. We would have like kids who would like come and touch her legs. And I thought it was just like normal practice, because I don't know, I'm not in the United States. I don't know what people do in here. And so it was like a completely different level of abuse for me. And so I allowed a lot of that, and I became very promiscuous. I started dating like all these kids, doing all this stuff. And outside of the schools, when they were like coming in, I got introduced to like gangs. I got introduced to drugs. I got introduced to the fast life. I got introduced to, this new world. What I thought it was like, these are friends. These are people that care for me. These are people that love me. These are people that are going to take care of me. I didn't get that at home. At home, it was completely different. And so clicking, making sure that I had a group that I can come to Even though we were doing like all this bad stuff, I thought that was my world. That was what I needed. But I didn't know that I was just getting myself deeper and deeper into this darker hole and not really taking care of myself the way I should have. I got married very young. I left the house. I have this man. He was older than me, taking care of me. And then I lost my son. And then the abuse just kept going and going and going. And then they were bringing in women from across the border. Immigrant women are very naive and they're trying to escape abuse from their countries and they're coming to a completely different level of abuse. Yeah. And so I think for me, I saw enough to the point where I was like so disgusted, but at the same time, so empowered to like, I do not want this happening to any other women. Yeah. So I started talking about it. I decided, I'm stronger enough. I can leave this relationship. That's when I left my husband, turned him into the police. I've been doing that ever since. Every woman that I can come across to and talk about, domestic violence, like abuse and how to protect, how to find the resources. I found myself a therapist. Years of having to take psychotropic medication, trying out different resources on what works, what doesn't work. And then, while I was on my healing journey and escaping all that lifestyle, I came across my second husband. And so he's the one that I got married to a few years ago and landed here in Colorado. My other two babies come after that because when I came here to Colorado, it wasn't a different level of abuse. It was undoing what the abuse had done to me and letting somebody take care of me and love me for who I am. I think for me, that was the hardest part of everything. When he would hold my hand, when he would want to give me a kiss on my cheek, even just telling me, I love you, it was really hard because I've never heard that and felt that. I didn't know how to let somebody take care of me. I didn't know how to love a man. I didn't know how to be a woman around a man. I didn't know how to allow myself the ability to heal from all the abuse. I also didn't have the courage to tell him, what had happened to me. He kind of knew a little bit about the domestic violence, but not like the whole background. And so I kind of like decided to hide that until I could enough learn to trust him, but also I didn't want to hurt him or scare him where he would just be like, oh, I'm going to run away. No, I don't want nothing to do with you. And I'm glad that I did because we built this beautiful and amazing bonding. And he's my best friend. A little bit after I got married, I was diagnosed with terminal cancer. They only gave me 6 months. I had leiomyosarcoma, which is a very strong, aggressive stomach cancer. And I had to go into treatment right away. I think at that time when they told me that, I didn't know, what does that mean? What am I going to do about that? My husband, he was the most amazing person. And he was like, for the years that I've known you, you've always been a fighter. For the years that I've known you, you've never quit on anything. And you're not going to quit now. So I'm going to be here by your side. Let's just do whatever we need to do and let's keep going towards the end. And so, I decided, I also have my son. I can't quit now.
How long ago was that diagnosis?
That was in 2011.
Oh, okay. So 11 years ago.
Yes. It's just been a roller coaster. That first time, it was very scary. I had really long, beautiful, dark hair. I was very big and voluptuous. That completely changed. I started losing some of my teeth. I started losing my eyesight. I started losing my hair. Do you remember those lab rats? The ones that have no hair? That was me. I started to look like those lab rats because everything fell off. I had no hair nowhere. If drugs didn't do the damage, cancer definitely is. But also my cancer came because of all the damage that I had done to myself. All of those years of abusing drugs, all of those years of bad eating habits, bad sleeping habits. They impacted my stomach, and, I had a bunch of like stomach ulcers that turned into cancer. But nevertheless, my husband decided, I'm not going to leave your side. Here I am. And we're going to do this together. And here we are. I've had 6 different types of cancer. So my first one in 2011 was leiomyosarcoma stomach. They removed my stomach. The second one was colon cancer. They removed a piece of my colon. My third one was in my hip bone. The fourth one was also on my hip bone. And on the fourth cancer that came on my hip bone, it also came with a surprise, because while I was doing radiation, my white cells were off the grid and they didn't know what was going on. So they did all of these testings, and turns out I was pregnant. So I was like, it's impossible. How am I going to be pregnant? There's no way I can be pregnant, because I had the Mirena. Mm-hmm. So not only was I pregnant, I had to do like all this radiation while I was pregnant. So my baby, we call him our miracle baby, mm-hmm. because we did 7 months of radiation together.
Oh, wow.
And he still made it through. He was super tiny, but he made it. He made it. And after that, I got better. He's going to be 5 years in June 6th. And that was in 2017. But last year, after I had my third child, my miracle baby, I decided I'm going to get operated. I don't want to go through any of this. I was doing fine. And this is like the hard part of cancer, right? You do fine for a little bit, and then here it goes again. Mm-hmm. And then you do fine for a little bit, and then here it comes back again. And so I thought, man, it's been a year. I'm doing okay. Let's just go ahead and I'm going to get operated. I tied my tubes and I said, I'm done. I'm not going to have any more babies. And just as the pandemic was happening, the beginning of 2019, I was feeling really sick. Went and I got my checkups, nothing. Cancer was still stable. 2020, I was still feeling like really sick, but I didn't know what's going on. And I thought, oh my gosh, it's COVID. Everybody was panicking because everybody thought it was COVID. Here I go to the hospital, they check, and they're like, you know what? No, you're fine. At the beginning of 2020, I started feeling really sick. Decided to go and get my lab work, and they tell me that I have cancer again. And so this time it's in my hip bone. So that was my 5th time. So I started doing the radiation. I was doing really fine. I finished all the treatments, and then they had to stop a few of them because of the pandemic, because the hospital was not open. And so that was fine. As soon as they reopened, like in the summer, I was able to complete all my treatments and finish up. Right around Christmas time, I started feeling really sick. I ended up in the hospital, and then they tell me, you're pregnant.
But your tubes were already tied and everything?
Exactly. So I was like, 2021, and here comes a new baby. And I'm like, how is that even possible? Because my tubes are tied. And she's like, well, I don't know, but you're pregnant. It was really hard. When we met with the doctor, they told us that we needed to end the pregnancy unless we had $5 million, which I didn't have. Mm-hmm. We needed to have $5 million so that we can get an operation to move the baby into the uterus, and so that it can continue to grow. We didn't have that level of money to pay for that type of surgery. They did give us like a hormonal treatment to try to see if the baby will like move from the tube into the uterus. It didn't happen. The baby was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So then my life was at risk. So we had to make a decision. We lost our baby on the spring of 2021. And right after that, I had to get another surgery. Yep, another surgery. But that was just to correct the mistake that had been made. They tied my tubes, but with that option that I could reverse it if I needed to. Also because I was still young, according to my doctor. And I was like, but I had told you that I was done.
Right.
I had told you that I did not want any more children. You should have like listened to what I told you instead of like making that mistake. So then they had to go in and correct that. So instead of like tying my tubes, they had to cut them, burn them, and retie them. I don't know what that looks like inside now, but that's what they had to do. They had to cut, burn, and retie. We have our 4th baby, who is our last angel baby. And right after him, it was really like one thing right after the other. I was having like this horrible stomach pain. I was having like this horrible back pain. And I just could not go to the bathroom. And it prolonged itself to like 1 week, 2 week. And I literally had to like end up in the hospital so like they could like push everything out. And while they were doing that, they also told me that my cancer was back. This time in my colon, very aggressive. So almost didn't even give me any time to breathe. Like immediately once they found out, I had to like get started on chemo. They had to do chemo pills because I had just gone through like the whole surgery and then losing the baby. So my body was still recovering. We waited a little bit and then they started me on chemo pills. They're very horrible and they make you feel the worst. Only for 3 months I had to take those pills. And then right after the 3 months when I was fine, then they continued the injections.
When was that?
That was last year.
Oh, just last year.
So I finished all of my treatments in November. And I finished all of my treatments and then I had to wait a little bit so that I can get in my lab work and make sure everything was fine. So come November, it was really nice to know that the colon cancer was not there, that I was doing okay. And in November, like it was, I think for me, like that was like the first month where I actually felt like I could breathe.
Yeah.
And I felt like I could be liberated from pain, from losing my child, from losing my first child, because I think like everything just kind of like came back to me, you know. I started feeling like very depressed. My dad passed away in 2019 and I didn't really get a chance to like fully grieve that. I didn't get a chance to fully grieve my child. And so I think everything was just slowly coming back. When that depression hit me, the memories, the flashbacks, you know, the pain, the abuse, everything came back. So in December, I think that was like the most darkest December that I had ever experienced in my whole life. I was dealing with so much pain, so much grief, so much anger, so many things that I decided, you know what, I cannot keep going on like this. This has been too much. This has been a lot. And I'm going to talk about it or I'm going to explode.
Mm-hmm.
When I went in for therapy, he actually recommended the Sapria retreat.
Mm-hmm.
I told everyone that I was going on a personal retreat.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I told my boss that I was going on a personal retreat. I told my coworkers that I was going on a personal retreat. I told friends that I was going on a personal retreat. I told my husband that I was going on a personal retreat.
Oh, even your husband.
Yeah. It was the most amazing thing that I could have done. Being at the retreat and meeting you, meeting all the other women, it definitely brought a lot of things that I needed to heal. It brought up a lot of things that I deeply have kind of like buried and didn't really talk about and acknowledge. And it's easier for me now to talk about the sexual abuse that I encountered when I was a child, the promiscuity that I had to like do and some of the things that I had to do when I was like in middle school, high school, because I didn't know why I was doing that. The sexual abuse, domestic abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, spiritual abuse that I had to suffer when I was with my ex-husband. And in that, it's also like the abuse that you perpetuate on yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I did that. And I had to like acknowledge that, but also like heal from that and understand that you're doing it because you're coming from this place where you've been hurt so much.
Just don't think you're worth more than that.
Yeah. You don't think you're worth it.
I have talked to a number of women who have been sexually abused and are promiscuous, but the misconception is that we're out there having sex for the joy of it. But for me, that was not the reason I was having sex. I was looking for love always. And I didn't know how else to value myself. The only way I knew how to value myself was through my body. We're all just hoping to find somebody to love us. And we're doing it through our body because we don't know another way.
Yep.
I think that's important to say. And then also I wanted to ask you how you got clean.
Ooh. That was also a very hard thing to do. I did that when I had my second son. I pause and I think about it because I don't realize my son just turned 18 last month. And for this past 18 years, he's been my strength, my source of strength, but he's also been my companion in everything. He's the reason why I decided to leave his father. He's the reason why I decided to change my life completely. He's the reason why I got stronger and decided enough is enough. I wish I was that strong when I had my first child, and that mistake wouldn't have ever happened. But I wasn't strong at that time. I think I was at my weakest, and also like I didn't understand what was happening. I was just 16.
Yeah.
It also hits me that this 18 years, he has had to put up with everything from when we left, from when I had to leave him because I needed to leave and get cleaned up and sober. I think for me, that was the hardest thing because in the back of my mind, I was thinking, he's a little kid. What if anything happens to him and I'm not there to protect him?
Mm-hmm.
I never want to be separated from him. But I also knew that if I didn't do that, I would never be free from drugs and alcohol, and I would not be able to offer him a life. I knew that if I didn't do that, I wouldn't have any future for me or for him. Been literally 18 years. I stuck through it because all I kept thinking about was my little one at home waiting for me. I was able to work at daytime, and the house where I was working, they offered me a living stipend. And so I was able to work and live on that same nursing home. My parents were taking care of him during the nighttime. I was literally every single day going to school, every single day I was working, and every single day taking care of this new individual. Now I have my career, I have my degrees, I have this wonderful and amazing job. And the little one, my new baby, he does not know any of my past. He's not experienced what I've went through with my older son.
Mm-hmm.
He's just seen this happy mom, always active, always after him, always loving him, always giving him all this stuff. And I feel like I kind of robbed some years from my older son while I was taking care of myself, while I was healing, while I was taking therapy, while I was going through all this stuff. But it was worth it. It was all done out of love. When I came back, I sat with my boss in one of the little tables and I talked to him and I told him that retreat that I did, I wanted to let you know that the reason why I did it, it's because I was abused as a child and I needed to go in and do that retreat for my own healing, for my own journey. He stayed quiet. He looked at me, but you know what? Having the strength, having the courage to say it and be acknowledged even at this stage felt really good because he validated what I say. And he also said, I'm so sorry that happened to you, but just know that we're here to support you. Let us know what else can we do for you. And so I talked to him about there's tons of resources that Sapria has. We just added it to our code of conduct. We do not accept harassment, sexual abuse in any type, shape, or form. And then I talked to some of my friends as well, letting them know because they were like, how was the retreat? And did you rest? And did you have a lot of time? And I just started crying and started telling them, oh my God, I'm so sorry. It wasn't about that. And so coming forward and talking to them, but you know what? It made it feel so much good. It was taking this heaviness, this weight off of my chest for me to be able to tell them what I had done and be brave about it and talk about it. It was really good. And then the third person that I had to talk to and be honest with was my husband. I'm glad I did that because I think that was the piece that was kind of missing. I don't know why I was afraid to kind of say it and thinking, it's going to break. He's going to tell me, sorry, we're going to get divorced. he stayed quiet. He took it very calmly. And he said, I don't care what you went through. I'm sorry that happened to you, but that's not going to change what I feel for you.
Yeah.
And so regardless of it, if I loved you then, I think I love you even more now. And so for me to hear that and for me to like be able to come forward with him and like not have anything in hiding anymore, it's been really good. There's a person that I have to like talk to and confront, and that's my mother. She's coming tomorrow. Mm-hmm. She will be here because it's my son's graduation. We'll be setting up a time where we can just like have a mother to daughter conversation. I think it is time for us to talk about the damage that was done. I don't expect for her to say, forgive me or I'm sorry, but I do want her to acknowledge, this is the issue that happened. This is what you did. This is what happened to me. And this is what I did. And this is the reasons why I did it. And I think it's just more about like us talking and just coming clear than even seeking any forgiveness or at this stage, what would it do?
I hope you get what you want, but
I think we just need some closure.
I hope also that you are ready for not getting what you want out of it. You haven't gotten what you wanted your whole life from her. I hope your expectations are just to get it off your chest and not to expect anything. I hope she comes through, but you don't know.
Absolutely. And my mom is much, much, much older now.
Yeah.
Also aging to the point where we don't know how long we're going to have her. And so I also don't want it to get to the point where, I'm never going to get to see her again. And I wish I would have said something, and I never did. With my dad, it was a little bit different because even if I would have wanted to say something to him, I'm glad that he left happy. Mm-hmm. It didn't break the family in any way.
So your dad never knew? My
dad never knew.
Mm-hmm. I don't think my dad ever knew. I just don't think I talked about it until I was 52. So I don't think my dad ever knew because he died many years ago. Isn't that interesting? I never even thought about that.
I think for his sake was the best thing. Mm-hmm. I don't know what his reaction would have been, but knowing him on how protective he was.
Usually I ask, what tips do you have for somebody who's gone through some shit and come out the other side, but still have cancer battles? I mean, you have really gone through the ringer, and I'm so sorry for everything you've gone through. I'm sorry for your hard life. But I just want to remind you that you shine so bright. You're a blessing to so many people. And I thank you for all your work helping others.
Thanks, Hera. What advice would I give other women like me? I don't often think when I talk that any of the things I have to say matter, or that any of the words that, come out of my mouth are important, which I have to be corrected a lot of times.
I feel the same way. I totally relate. I totally get it.
Because we haven't been validated or valued or loved or acknowledged to the point where things that happen to you, you think are going to be important to someone else listening or to someone else. But I had to be corrected a lot of times because you know what? Domestic violence happens to both women and men, and we don't often talk about it. Making the wrong choices in life happen to everybody, and we don't often talk about it. Being good parents or being bad parents, happens to all of us, and we don't often talk about it. Mm-hmm. I guess the best advice that I can give is know your worth, know your value, know that no matter what you go through in life, you are important, you are beautiful, you are loved, and you matter. And you matter. And never, ever shut your voice away. Never, ever shy away from talking. And never, ever, ever let others shut you up either. Because I think we do that a lot as well. Mm-hmm. I think the best thing that I can tell people is be you. Be yourself. Be broken. Be bad. Be happy. Be imperfect. There's nothing wrong with being that. Those are the beauties that each of us carry. Those are the differences that make us unique. Those are the differences that make us who we are. Love life. wake up with the purpose every morning. Sure, I've had to deal with a lot of shit. Sure, I've had to deal with a lot of sickness. I've had to deal with a lot of death. I have to deal with a lot of bad mistakes. But you know what? There isn't one day when I haven't waken up, and whether it is making it to the bathroom or whether it is making it through the day or making it through whatever, that's just my purpose. Taking it one day at a time, living life, enjoying it, because I don't know if I'm going to be here tomorrow. I don't know if I'm going to be able to see my kids at the end of the day. I don't know if anything happens to me the moment I step out of here, But what I've done, have I called who I wanted to call? Have I told the ones that I want to tell them that I love? Have I talked to whoever I wanted to talk to? Have I eaten what I wanted to eat? Have I, felt happy and smiled and done my due diligence? Like, yeah, if I've done that, then I've made my day and I'm not worried about it. They're very simple things. I wish I can tell people like, save money and, buy a car and buy a house. Fuck all that. Like, you don't need none of that. Go eat chocolate. Go eat what you want. Go have fun. Go play. If you want to go, run naked in the rain, go do it. Do whatever makes you happy. Do whatever people tell you can't do. When the doctors tell me like, you only have 6 months, there's nothing else we can do. I was like, well, I will show you what I can do with those 6 months. It's always challenging the what's, challenging like the why nots. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, it's always asking that, like, why not do that? Like, why not?
I love that.
I wrote a poem. I read this to myself all the time. I wrote it when I was going through like the different stages, but also it's a reflection of what we should be like and what we should do. And the poem that I wrote is titled Be Like a Tree. Stand ground and tall. Grow roots of hope. Be prepared for all seasons. Soak up the sun's love. Embrace the moon's light. Be graceful in the wind. Feel refreshed after it rains. Provide shelter to others. Bear fruit and share it. Plant seeds of kindness. Remain deeply rooted. Always reach for the sky. Lean on other trees without trying to outdo one another. Keep adding beauty and color to the world. Live in harmony and peace. And like a river that once flowed, know when it's time to let go. For any woman who's out there listening and finds the courage to talk about what happened to them when they were, minors. And if one of them comes out forward and talks about it, you know what? That is the reason why I was here. There's always a purpose and a reason behind everything. And often we don't understand it. When you asked me if I wanted to talk, first I thought about it and I was a little intimidated because I was like, I don't know that I want to talk about it. But then I'm like, come on, here you go. Preaching to everybody, talk about this, telling people to be empowered, to change, to be vocal, to not be shy about what happened to them and make a difference. And so what good would it be if I'm asking people to do that and I don't do that myself?
I mean, when I first started talking about it, the shame that I felt recounting that situation because I didn't jump right up, and it seemed like I liked it because my body was responding. But the more I talk about it, the less shame I feel, the less weight it is on my shoulder. So I think even just for ourselves, for us talking about it, it's a service to ourselves, not just to others. It's taking away all the cloak that you've been hiding behind and just being able to shine.
It's healing that part of me that I kind of pushed away, that nobody really validated. Mm-hmm. And it's validating that 5-year-old, right?
Right.
I want to make sure that my inner child, that little girl that was not validated, that was not loved, is also being acknowledged. But I have to start that with myself.
Right.
If I don't validate that, I'm doing exactly what everyone else has done to me all of these years. And I don't want to do that. And I also don't want anyone else to do that, because you're repressing the pain, you're repressing the abuse, you're repressing all of those things that you're feeling. And you're also damaging yourself, but you're also unwilling you're also perpetuating the same thing that people did to you all this time.
Yes.
We do it unconsciously, but we have to heal that part, right? We have to acknowledge that little girl. I have to acknowledge that, teenager, and I also have to help them heal. And in order for me to heal as an adult, I have to heal those, my years of growing up without feeling that. And so you have to do a lot of comforting because, when I was 5 years old, when I was 7 years old, when I was 9 years old, and then when I was 12 years old and I came to the United States, all of those different stages, I have to go back and be like, what did I do at that stage? How did I react? What happened to me at this stage? Like, how did I react? How can I move forward from that? So they're like little stages that we have to heal.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of trauma and generational trauma, and there's a lot of like trauma that we have to heal, but there's also a lot of internal damage that we do to yourself when you don't heal that trauma that you've been carrying on from when you were 5 years old to when you were now 40.
I heard it once like this. It happened to me when I was 7, but I've been reliving it for 40 something years. I've been doing it to myself for 40 some years until I dealt with it, until I viewed it, until I faced it head on, because otherwise it was just this tape that played in my head of how I was this terrible little girl. But once I could face it, I could stop playing that movie, which was not true at all. So that's one of the reasons I think it's so important to speak out and talk.
Every time I talk about it, it's kind of like listening to myself, empowering myself, and at the same time, letting it go.
Mm-hmm.
Letting it go, because I'm like, do I want that to keep hurting me? Do I want that to keep pushing down on me and making me feel miserable? I do not want that for myself.
Right.
I don't. I want to be happy. I want to be loved. I want to grow old. I want to grow with my children. I want to be able to see them get married and, have wonderful wives where none of this happens.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of See Beneath Your Beautiful, hosted by Hara Allison. And thanks for your ratings and reviews. We'll be back next week with a new episode. Stay tuned.